I want to talk about the most innovative game of 2008. It's the one game that really has me excited about the current console generation for the first time in a long while. It's the first game I'd seriously consider using to introduce non-gamers to the hobby. The game is beautiful, it's witty, it's satisfying, and it offers a fresh approach to learning to play. The game I'm talking about is not Mirror's Edge. Yeah, Mirror's Edge has revolutionary gameplay and design aesthetic, but I'm excited about the game with the revolutionary design philosophy, which is Prince of Persia. I realize this sounds a bit odd to call the 7th game in a 20-year franchise as revolutionary. Hear me out. Video games are a skill-based form of entertainment. It's not like television or movies. You can't just sit there and soak them up. You have to get involved and do some work to get the entertainment out of them, which means that to enjoy video games, you have to learn to play them. Now, people enjoy learning, and skill-based games are a lot like skill-based activities in the real world. If you're learning to shoot hoops, then you pick up the basketball and take a shot. Maybe it goes in, maybe it doesn't. You see the result and you learn from it. Then you pick up the basketball again and use that feedback to guide your next attempt. It's a cycle of experimentation and feedback that can be deeply satisfying, even when you're not winning. Except, that's not how most video games work. No, in the typical video game, you pick up the ball, you take your shot, and then if you miss, you're immediately sent back to the beginning of the level. Imagine if the moment you missed a free throw, you were transported away from the court and had to walk all the way back and try again. This would insert several minutes of non-learning between getting feedback and taking your next action. It would break that cycle of action and feedback that makes this process so satisfying, and it would make learning take that much longer. How long would it take to learn the piano if you had to stop practicing once you hit too many bad notes? It sounds absurd, but that's exactly how video games work. If you're new, you're going to spend more time being punished than you spend being entertained. I've brought this issue up before, and the typical answer I get from fanboys is that new players should just suck it up, because this is how everyone learned to play. But is it? How did the rest of us learn to play? Well, I learned to play here, and later here. But most gamers out there today learned on one of these, using this, which had an astounding 8 buttons of possible input. Now, I don't want to get into the full evolution of console controllers, but the short of it is that over the next quarter century, the controllers mutated and copied and merged and inbred until eventually they grew into the toys we have today. This is the PlayStation 3 controller. 4 shoulder buttons, 2 of them are analog. There are 2 analog thumbsticks, 4 pressure-sensitive buttons, 4 directional buttons, some housekeeping buttons in the center, plus an invisible button under each thumbstick. All this, and the controller is sort of aware of movement and gravity, so that you can have even more inputs by simply tilting or shaking the controller. Now think about that. The controller is now more complex than the basic controls needed to operate an automobile. And they have to be, because those controls need to not just let you drive a virtual car, but fly a jet, or a giant robot, or a vampire, or a Japanese schoolgirl, and 1,000 other things. Most of us began learning on those old 8-button systems when we were just kids. We started out simple, and then we grew with them as they evolved. Now imagine what it's like for people trying to learn the whole thing in one go. Picture what it's like for newcomers to learn not just the controller, but the visual language of these games and the conventions of the various genres. And imagine them trying to learn all of this in a situation where every failure results in a punishment. A study was released recently that said that 50% of all American adults play video games. Everyone seemed to celebrate this like games were finally gaining mainstream appeal, but my first reaction when I heard that story was, that's it? Is that the best we can do after 30 years? Only half? The television conquered America in much less time than that. What went wrong? Why aren't more people gaming? Why aren't we hitting market saturation rates of 90% or more? I sometimes hear non-gamers say, I'm just terrible at playing games. I never hear them say, I'm not interested or I don't like them, but I'm no good at them. I think these are people who would probably like to join us if they could get over the wall. You're bad at video games? Well, of course you are. You've never been given room to learn. People who've never driven a car are terrible at that too. And if people learn to drive the way they learn to play video games, then your first driving lesson wouldn't be backing the car out of the driveway. It would be driving a stick shift in a rally race. You'd blow the engine, you'd crash, you'd suffer repeated and humiliating defeats until you got the hang of it. You'd have hours and hours of frustration and failure before you ever got your first taste of victory. No wonder it's so hard to get new people to play video games. If you didn't grow up with them, then how hard is it going to be to take it up later in life when learning's slower, the controllers have grown a lot more complex, and you have less time to waste? Nearly all games are tuned with the experienced gamer in mind. Normal difficulty means normal for adults who have been playing since they were children. And sometimes there isn't even a way to lower it. This state of affairs is even more outrageous in the face of complaints from publishers about how second-hand game sales are killing them or piracy is eating them alive. If they want to sell more games, then we need more gamers. And most games out there seem to be designed to repel as many new people as possible. Which brings us to the Wii, the low-priced, underpowered console that is kicking the asses of the big boys. Wiis aren't just selling to the same small group of gamers. They're reaching out and turning new people into gamers. A lot of people are attributing the success of the Wii to the fun, family-friendly nature of the games and the intuitive controls, and I'm sure there's truth in that, but another reason new people are giving the Wii a try is because Wii games aren't being made with the assumption that the player will have 10 years prior experience with the controller. Suddenly newcomers and old-timers are all on the same page. We're all learning together, and because we're learning, the games aren't made to be punishing. The Wii is providing an on-ramp for newcomers, and newcomers are taking it. But this success doesn't have to be exclusive to the Wii, and in fact the cutesy button style of the Wii may well be putting off as many people as it attracts. There are probably a lot more people out there who might want a game, but who aren't attracted to the likes of Link or Mario or Lego. Maybe they'd like to be Solid Snake, Kratos, or Lara Croft. They just need a way in. Which brings us back to Prince of Persia. The radical idea here is that there are no punitive punishments for failure. You can't die. There's no game over screen. They flirted with the idea of penalty-free learning in the Sands of Time series, but here they've deliberately embraced the concept. That's not to say there isn't failure. If you fall, you're transported back to the last place where you were standing with your feet on solid ground, and you can try the obstacle again right away. You still have to overcome the challenge if you want to succeed. But you're free to practice, experiment, and learn without the game throwing away a bunch of your time for doing so. You just pick the ball up and take another throw. And here's what makes Prince of Persia such a breakthrough. It abolishes the punitive setbacks for failure, and then offers an approachable experience that is not dripping with cuddly cute characters and child-friendly themes. This is a game an uninitiated adult might actually want to play, and it's designed so that they can. Now, the hardcore are faulting Prince of Persia for being too easy, and I have to admit it will be too easy for platforming veterans. I'm rubbish at platforming games, and the difficulty here feels just right to me. So if you're an experienced Mario player, this game is likely to be a cakewalk. But this raises an interesting question. What is it about the challenge in a game that makes overcoming it so rewarding? Is it simply the difficulty of the obstacles, or the severity of the punishment? Do you need a game to punish you in order to enjoy victory? Is that the right way to design a game, or just the way we've always done it? In any case, if you have a friend who has never been into video games, put in Prince of Persia and put the controller in their hands. They might shy away from the brutal challenge of Ninja Gaiden, and they might not care for Animal Crossing, but the new Prince of Persia can offer them a look at the fun we've been having all these years. And even if you are a hardcore platformer, I still recommend the game. Even if the idea of gentle challenges puts you off, the game is otherwise flawlessly executed. Unless the only thing you're after in a game is raw challenge, this game will still charm and entertain you. Consider it a nice counterbalance to all the other games on your shelf where the challenge was just right, but the dialogue was written by robots, the gameplay was designed by marketing, and the plot felt like something that just came out of John Carmack's microwave.